Hello, my name is Valerie Lasoya, and I am a developmental delay preschool teacher at Grand Heights Early Childhood Center in Artesia, New Mexico. This is my first year teaching. Prior to teaching, I was a service coordinator and a developmental specialist with the New Mexico Fit Early Intervention Program. Welcome to my presentation on accommodations and modifications. We will be discussing the Individualized Education Plan and the 504 Plan for Students with Disabilities. We will talk about what accommodations and modifications are and how the Universal Design for Learning framework creates opportunities for students with an IEP and 504. We'll also discuss parent and student involvement as well as teacher, paraprofessional, and other IEP team member responsibilities. A 504 is a specialized plan to ensure a child has the accommodations needed. A child with any disability may qualify for a 504. An IEP is a legal document that is developed for children who have one of the 13 disabilities with specific challenges listed in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. 504s are developed by school staff to provide students with any disability the supports, accommodations, and environment needed to be successful in school. This includes students with mental health conditions such as dyslexia, chronic pain disorders, neurological disorders, or mental health conditions, to name a few. An IEP provides students with disabilities the accommodations and the modifications needed to be successful in school. This means that they can receive specialized instructional support to complete assigned tasks, as well as accommodations like those on a 504 plan. A student cannot receive specialized instructional support with a 504 plan. So what exactly are accommodations and modifications? An accommodation is a way to help a student learn the same material or take the same test in a different way as other students. A modification is a change to what the student is expected to learn. Accommodations include mode of presentation, the equipment used, how we expect our students to respond, and the environment provided. Some modifications include the level of instruction that we give, graded performance, how we grade their performance, and simply rewording and simplifying assignment and content. Presentation of material can come in many different forms, such as read-alouds, large print books, or audiobooks. Some types of equipment include small fidgets or wobble chairs for students who have a hard time sitting still and focusing. They may find it easier to learn and retain information if they're able to move around in some way, releasing that excess energy while also participating in classroom discussion or individual assignments. Students with limited motor skills, visual impairments, or dyslexia may benefit from speech-to-text accommodations. The STT software allows them to transfer spoken words into written content for their writing assignments, including long essays. Extended time on assignments or tests help students who have the ability to complete the same work as everyone else, but may just need some extra time to process the information. Some students benefit from special seating arrangements to help them stay focused during class, or even separate seating arrangements for testing to remove distractions. Other seating arrangements include being away from the window or the door, or even seating close to a teacher. The level of instruction is a great way to enhance learning. Hands-on experience or the use of manipulatives activates the listening, visual, and spatial processes of learning, and it creates connections for storing relevant information. Graded performance allows students the opportunity to earn passing grades and provides flexibility needed to meet individual needs. An example of a graded performance modification would be lowering the amount of material the student is expected to learn or master. Another example would be expecting a third grade class to pass a third grade level spelling test, while a student with an IEP is only expected to pass a first grade level spelling test. Universal design for learning. Instructional designs that have been created for special education students can also be used for general education students under the Universal Design for Learning framework. This is one way to increase the opportunities educators have for inclusive practices. Learning environment changes can also take place using the UDL framework. This is somewhat of an overlap with the environmental changes through accommodations and modifications. Both occur for the benefit of the student, and neither are focused on changing the student. They are only focused on changing the learning environment. The difference is that the UDL aims to make changes that benefit all students, whereas accommodations and modifications aim to make changes for a specific student. In either sense, changes to the learning environment take place and benefit special education and general education students. One of the principles of IDEA is called the least restrictive environment. Simply stated, all students with or without disabilities must be educated together to the maximum extent possible. For students with disabilities, the first placement option considered is always the general education classroom, although the IEP team must make individualized decisions. We will now review a video with further information on the least restrictive environment.
Some individuals have difficulty concentrating, while others have difficulty with motor skills. There are many different types of learning disabilities, and as such, the term learning disability should be thought of as an umbrella term used to describe a student who doesn't learn in the mainstream way. Specifically, a learning disability is defined as an impairment that interferes with the student's academic performance. The key point here is that the disability is explicit towards a particular area of learning. For example, a student may be able to read but not be able to write. Students with special needs were not always allowed in the mainstream classroom. In fact, just a few decades ago, students with learning disabilities were routinely segregated away from their classmates. However, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires that all students with learning disabilities be taught in the least restrictive environment. The essence of this requirement is to ensure that students are not unnecessarily removed from the mainstream classroom or isolated away from their peers. If a student in your class has a learning disability, they may find it difficult to stay on task. There are two fundamental ways in which the classroom assignments can be focused to help students with special needs stay on task. The first way is through accommodations. Accommodations provide an alternate way of learning the curriculum. Accommodations do not change the curriculum, but make changes in how the information is presented. For example, a fifth grade student is learning about the rock cycle, and they are given a graphic organizer to help them visualize the information. The second way is through modifications. Modifications make changes to the curriculum. Modifications are not synonymous with accommodations, as the student is assigned a different curriculum than the rest of the class. For example, a modification of the spelling curriculum is one in which the student will use the spelling words from the second grade text, rather than from the sixth grade speller. In this lesson, we discussed educating students with special needs. The educational needs of these students are best served if they are in the mainstream classroom, being taught alongside of their peers. However, Since these students have learning disabilities, the curriculum might have to be tailored to meet their individual needs. This is what is known as making modifications for the student. Another way in which special needs students are taught in the mainstream classroom is through accommodations, or supplementing the curriculum with extra materials. An example of an accommodation would be providing notes for the student or graphic organizers to help them visualize the information.
We will now listen to a recap from a student who has a 504 plan, a high school educator with students in her classroom receiving accommodations and modifications, and a former student who never got those accommodations and modifications needed.
I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult. My years as a student in elementary, junior, and high school were very difficult to get through. I had problems with attention and staying on task, and I had very poor time management and organization skills. Eventually, I dropped out of high school, and then I went back later and received my GED. I believe that I would have made it through high school without dropping out if I had received the support I needed from my teachers and through some appropriate accommodations.
So the IEP modification that I see most commonly in this town, or just in the district, since I've been here, and it's not like I've been here very long, but the most common one I see would be extended time, whether that be on tests or on assignments. And really, it's very easy to accommodate that. I make sure that they have almost a full period to work on their paper, and then if they need to take it home, they can take it home. And I make sure they know that I'm available during lunch if they need me. And I also make sure and check in on them. Sometimes I'll send reminders on Teams like, hey, make sure that you work on your paper, or if you need help, come see me. And I try to stay on top of that with my IEP students. Another one is reading to the students. So for most classes, the case manager will do that. We'll take a handful of the kids in the same class who need to be read to, and then read them their test or whatever it may be. It's a little harder because I teach Spanish, so usually what I have done in the past with kids who need to be read to is I try to pull them aside or do it individually, and I just walk around and while they're testing or whatever they're doing, and if they're stuck on a question or something, I make sure to read it with them and walk them through it. I have done in the past where I bring in another teacher to watch my other students, and then I pull out my IEP student or students and read to them individually. So yeah, just different things.
My 504 was put in place for an anxiety disorder. The accommodations I received were being able to step out of a classroom if I needed to, visit the counselor's office and sit in there, and leave class early to avoid large crowds. I liked my 504 not because of what it did, but because it made me feel seen rather than the way I felt being invalidated. It has benefited me by making me more comfortable in school, which made learning easier.
The IEP team. The IEP team consists of parents, students, teachers, paraprofessionals, and amongst many other team members. Parents are their students' most important advocate. They are the protector of their child's rights under the IDEA and can reject proposals made by the school district or IEP team. Other ways they can advocate for their child is to maintain records on student performance and even individual work and projects that their child has turned in. The parents can also provide input about strengths, weaknesses, and needs. Requests for meetings can be made if they feel services aren't being met or just don't quite fit their child's needs. Students can also advocate on their own behalf if they're old enough. They can provide their own input about what they believe their strengths and weaknesses are and what kind of accommodations and modifications they may need. Teachers and paraprofessionals should review their students' IEPs and be aware of the strengths and weaknesses every student possesses. It can be very difficult to create a proper learning environment and teaching strategies if you don't take the time to get to know your students first. Progress should be regularly monitored and documented. Changes can be made as needed when routine monitoring takes place. Professional development should also be an ongoing practice for educators. It is important to stay up to date on specific guidelines and to also collaborate with other teachers when deciding the best approach to providing or changing services. How are these services applied in my own classroom? I work with preschool children, 3 to 5 years old. Every single student in my room has a language delay. Here I have a picture of one of my students who struggles with her articulation as well as grasp. I've had to show her on several occasions how to hold that crayon, providing that hand-over-hand assistance. And this is a picture she drew, and it's one of my favorite pictures. I told her I would keep it forever. It's a picture of me. It's got my long hair on one side, and the other side is a little bit shorter. And those big holes aren't my ears, they're actually the holes in my ears. I often and regularly provide modeling sounds for everything that we do throughout the class period. I provide visual aids when they aren't understanding, for those students who aren't understanding, have receptive problems, what I'm asking of them, or understanding what the directions are, or what we're doing next. We have a visual schedule that they are able to use. I repeat and I simplify directions. If they're not able to follow a two-step direction, I will break it down into one-step directions. And we use a lot of language throughout the day, whether it be recess, learning centers, or breakfast or lunch. They love movement-oriented activities. We watch movement activities, and they love the music aspect. What I observe for is their listening skills and also their motor skills. Are they able to listen to what these learning videos are asking them to do, and are they able to do it correctly? I also provide a lot of positive reinforcement. Hey, you did a great job on your own. You didn't even need my help. Hey, that was awesome. High five. And we also use sensory toys. A puppet for one of my students who has a hard time sitting still. And this has helped him to focus a little bit better when we're working on different activities. He's able to move his hands around rather than spinning around in circles. In conclusion, accommodations change how a student accesses information and demonstrates their knowledge of the curriculum content. A modification changes the curriculum. It changes what the student is required to do and how they're required to demonstrate that knowledge. Accommodations for a student with special needs may be used for all students through the Universal Design for Learning practices, and every member of the IEP team serves as an important role in deciding and implementing individualized accommodations and modifications.